Are we live? Are we
Yep, we're
are we
live.
going? All right. What's going on, peoples? I know we're a little bit late. Okay, it's 11:35. Wow, 5 minutes late. We're on we can't say CP time. Not politically correct, but we're on late people time. What's going on, all my peoples in the Instagram world and Facebook Live? How y'all doing today? All right, we're back on the Q&A, and we all fell back. We got that extra hour, so everybody's feeling really great, and I'm super excited about the opportunity to answer questions. Let me just say this really quickly before we get the thing going. If we're not careful, this whole thing will just be a relationship Q&A show, and I'm not bothered. I'll answer relationship questions all the live long day, but I've been on the planet for 50 years. And I can answer more than just relationship questions. Although, listen, I'm totally down to do it. But we can talk about just about anything, and we are endeavoring to do that. Our plan today is to follow the same pattern that we did last week, which is I'm going to answer the questions in as much as 5 minutes as best I can. And that way I can get to as many questions as I absolutely can, something that we want to do. And if we're all good, we can jump right into it. Are we ready? We got questions? I have answers. Morgan's back today. I don't know where he was. I think he was in a jungle safari last week. But we're going to jump into it. Let's go. So let's hit it.
All right, cool. All right, I'm going through some questions that we may have left over just to get us started. We don't have any in today yet.
Okay, come on, people. Let's go. Are you awake? Instagram, where are my questions? Facebook, where are my questions at? Come on, let's jump into it.
Well, okay, I'll ask a question that
Sure.
maybe everybody may enjoy that's not necessarily a relationship question. How did you get started in baking cakes?
How did I get started at baking cakes? It's an excellent question. You know, my dad bakes a cake. I think I've answered this question before. My dad bakes a cake. There's just one cake my dad can bake. It's actually my grandmother's cake. It's a pound cake, and he wouldn't really teach anybody how to make it, or maybe he did, but I wanted to learn how to make it. I went to visit him in his cottage. He taught me how to make the cake, and he's got like a summer home, and I went to visit him there, and he taught me how to make the cake, and it was really fun to make. And I just said, oh, wow. This was cool. I can't cook at all, but I can bake. I can bake now about 15 cakes from scratch. And so I learned how to make that cake, and then I just said, oh, man, let me figure out how to make some other cakes. And so I watched Paula Deen a little bit. Can we say Paula Deen? Paula Deen, sweetheart, you taught me how to make a cake. I don't know where you are, but I learned how to make a cake. Paula Deen, I got some great lessons from Paula Deen. And then I talked to some other older women. I was going to say old ladies, but some other older women, and learned how to make German chocolate cake, and just went on and on and on. Now there's all these different cakes I can make. So,
Well, that's good. Cool. Let's see. We've got one coming in now. I don't want to ask it before it's done because I don't think I can talk this slow. What are your thoughts on divorce and remarriage?
divorce and remarriage. This is a loaded question. I get it quite a bit. I know that there was a time when people felt like, and certainly in the church world, there are people that really took divorce in a really strong, hard way. They felt like the Bible was very specific about divorce, and certainly it is. And so there were people that were very hard against divorce and almost treated divorce as if it was some kind of unpardonable sin. And I get it biblically. I totally understand it. I think that Jesus said in John chapter 6, that the words that I speak to you, they are spirit and they are life. So there's the life, or the actual foundational aspect of a word, and then there is the spirit of the word. Just like there is the letter of the law, there's the spirit of the law. And I think that we got a little bit away from the spirit of what marriage is supposed to be about, and not quite as much. We got so into the letter, specifically around what Jesus said, that we got disconnected a bit from the spirit of what marriage is supposed to be. Marriage is supposed to be a picture of the unity that exists between Christ and his church. And in Ephesians, Paul writes, in essence, explaining to us that marriage is this picture of that unity. And so I feel like as much as God hates divorce, and as much as God is grieved by divorce, I think that God is equally grieved by people being married together who hate each other, can't stand each other, are not supposed to. I think the Lord is really, I think because marriage is supposed to be that picture, I think he is grieved by that. And so I think that people who are together just strictly because they're afraid they're going to bust hell wide open, I think they're missing the spirit of the power of what marriage is really supposed to be about. I don't think being remarried after a divorce is so unpardonable sin. And I don't think I think divorce is not a good thing, but I don't think divorce is the worst thing that can ever happen. It's bad. It's not a good thing. But I think there's nothing wrong with getting divorced and getting remarried. And I know that there are ultra conservative people, Christians, who strongly disagree with me on that point. And I understand their biblical perspective on it. But I think that in these last days and times, in this world that we live in today, we have to keep in mind that Sabbath was made for man, not man for Sabbath. And what I mean by that is God creates man and then creates marriage to be a blessing to man and women. It's not like God created marriage as a principle and then created man and woman and put them under that principle. It's not really what it is. That we have to be careful not to be overly pharisaical and about our adherence to a legal word. That God makes Adam, says it's not good for him to be alone, creates a helper suitable for him to enhance his life, to make his life better. And so at the spirit, at the foundational understanding, if we look at the origins of the relationship, Adam and Eve, the foundation of it is that God put Adam and Eve together for them to be happier. God put Adam and Eve together for Adam's life to be blessed, and ultimately for Eve's life to be blessed. And if two people are together and their time together, their relationship together does not benefit them in a blessed kind of a way, we are really pushing the very origins of why the marital relationship was even created. If we require for people to stay together who can't stand each other, who hate each other, who don't love each other, who don't support each other, who aren't on each other's sides, who aren't there for one another, separate from all of the other divorce reasons for people have for divorce. I think fundamentally at the foundation of the question is this persistence from the right, from the ultra conservative Christians, that divorce is just, you have to stay with the person. And I even know people who believe unless your spouse dies, you can't remarry, you're committing adultery, all based on what Jesus said there in the Gospels. Certainly Jesus did say it. I'm not disputing it. But I think that there's more to it. And even Jesus comes in, heals a man on the Sabbath, and gets in trouble for a man carrying his mat on the Sabbath. And Jesus reminds us that Sabbath was made for man, not man for Sabbath. And that's my point. Marriage was made for man, not man for marriage.
Cool.
Sorry.
No, you're good. All right. So a great question now we had come in. How did you finally know your calling was to be a pastor?
For me, quite honestly, I didn't really want to be a pastor. My dad's a pastor. My great-grandfather was a pastor. It wasn't something I wanted to be. I got a chance to see what the life was like. Honestly, by watching my father, and nothing against my father, but watching my father and who he is and kind of how he pastors, I really didn't want to be a pastor. My father and I are very, very different people. And so I didn't want to be a pastor, not so much because I thought being a pastor was so horrible, but just because of how different my father and I are and how I just didn't think I could do it. I'm watching how he does it. And I just thought, well, I can't do it like him. And my dad's very successful. So when I saw how successful he was and how he skinned his rabbit, how he was a pastor, and my personality is so totally different from him. My attitude is different from him. How I am. I'm a totally different person from him. That led me to the deduction that, yeah, I can't be a pastor. It's not something I can do. I got preaching almost accidentally. It's kind of a crazy thing. I was in the youth group. I just wanted to be a good, faithful guy. But there was this girl that had recently joined the youth group. I mean, I'm like 15. This girl had newly joined the youth group, not the girl I married, because my wife wasn't even saved at this time. She's a straight buck heathen. But anyway, this girl that I was interested in joined the youth group, really cute girl. I was trying to impress her by showing her that, I was involved with the youth group. I played basketball and football, and I got good grades. I was a good guy. I wasn't necessarily in the leadership. But I was at a meeting that they were having for the retreat, and my youth pastor at the time, I don't know why they said it, but they said, man, I wish we had a young person that could speak. And I think to impress this girl, I kind of was like, hey, yeah, I'll speak. I don't know if they thought I was qualified to speak. I don't think I was qualified to speak. I was in the youth group. I was faithful. Why I said I'll speak, I think to impress this girl, but why they said, sure, Andy, you can speak. They let me speak. Long story short, I spoke at this retreat. It's my first time ever speaking. And the power of God fell on the group. And it started this revival within my youth group. And I was kind of launched into a leadership position that I really wasn't even sure that I wanted to be a part of. That's when I was 15, and I started preaching from there. I think for a long time, I fought being a leader of people, although I'm the oldest of 8 children, and so I've always been responsible for people. So leading people isn't something that's totally far-fetched and crazy, even to this very day. I am a leader in my family, in the Thompsons, and I'm proud of that, and I'm so proud of all my siblings and all the work that they're doing. But I for a long time, I held off on whether or not I really wanted to be a pastor. And so I guess in conclusion, my time is running up. I'll just say that I think for me, I know that there's a lot of people out there that have been prophesied into being a pastor. And I know that there's a lot of people that watch from afar, and I think they want to be a pastor. I'm not saying I didn't want to be one. But what I will say is that if God really has called you, then there's going to be some favor that's going to go along with it. That the Lord is going to confirm his word with signs following. And I think that a part of what has happened here in North Carolina, it started really when I was in Oklahoma. And I met a guy when I was there in Oklahoma who really was a very serious mentor to me when I was 15. And I was more like him, and so I saw the possibility of really being a pastor and being effective. But if God really has called you, then the Lord will confirm his word with signs following. And there will be some favor that will go along with it that will confirm to you that you really are called. I don't think it's just someone said something to you. I don't think it's just feeling called. I think that there are some results that show you that you're actually called. And if you have never seen any results, then you have to be careful that you're not just running on your desire to be in the ministry. You don't want to do this if you're not called to do it. It's a very difficult thing to do. It's awesome, it's wonderful, but it's hard even if you're called to do it. And I've got something happening in the beginning. Morgan and I were just talking about it. First week in December, I've got this whole event, my OCF event. I've got a fellowship of pastors. I got a bunch of young guys that are under me now. And anyone that comes to my church or watches on a regular basis, I've got multiple campuses, multiple services. I don't preach all of them anymore. And I've got some real no-joke young preachers who are really good. And my fellowship is really growing. It's something I haven't really focused a whole lot on. I've spent a lot of time the last 15 years really building World Overcomers, and now I really am feeling called more than ever. And I've said it before, not just to pastor, but to pastors. And so for pastors that are watching, for people who are watching who know a pastor who doesn't have any connection. I'm in the middle of changing my whole life to be able to pastor pastors in a more effective way. And that's my commercial for OCF really quickly in the middle of my Q&A. Sorry, Morgan.
No, you're all right.
I mean, it's my show. I can do whatever I want.
Absolutely. Interesting question came in. You seem to have some interesting views on God, church, and social justice. What are you doing and encouraging your church to do regarding issues of social justice and racism in our country? What do you think about the falling away of pastors as social justice advocates?
I think it's an excellent question. I think especially for the role of the African-American pastor for a long time as a result of the inequality in the country that black people were dealing with, and we still are dealing with it. But I think that there was a time when as African-Americans, I believe that our aim is that Jesus came that we'll have life and have it to the full. And I think that that's always been the aim of every man of God who's called, is to get people to get Jesus, and for Jesus to be the way, the truth, and the life, and for him to be the gate, for him to be the door to abundant life. I think for a long time for African Americans, a significant aspect of that abundant life was equality, justice under the system. And I think a lot of the spiritual leaders were political leaders. The Martin Luther Kings and the Reverend Al Sharptons and the Jesse Jacksons. I don't want to say that they weren't more spiritual because they couldn't be more spiritual. I think and I don't know any of them. I didn't have a relationship with any of them. I think that maybe they weren't as spiritual because the situation or the moment of the time, a part of our deliverance. We can look at Moses as much as he brought the law, but a significant aspect of his ministry was leading the children of Israel out of the slavery of Egypt, through their wilderness and into their Canaan. And that was a major focus. And there was a spiritual revival that was a part of it, but that was the focus. And so I think that the times, particularly the civil rights movement, for African Americans anyway, the time required that the black preacher, the black pastor, be this very serious, socially, politically active person. And I'm not saying that the times don't still require it, but I don't know if it requires it at quite the level that it did at that time. And I think that some of the recent racial injustices that we've always been dealing with, but that have been highlighted, young men killed, et cetera, is requiring for us to come out again. I don't really know how I feel about that. I think that for a while I wondered, am I a man of God who just happens to be black, or am I a black man who's a man of God? And I think that there's a desire to be the first, and then I think you find out you're the second, meaning I think that there is a desire within me to be judged for the content of my character and not necessarily the color of my skin. At this particular point in time right now, World Overcomers is and has been one of the fastest growing churches in America. We just made the top 100 fastest growing churches in Outreach magazine again, and that was really cool. And I think much of that happened as a result of the Raleigh church we started that really has blown up in the last 3 years. But to this day, World Overcomers is 95% African American. Even the white people that we do have mostly are white guys married to black women. We do have some white women in the church. I don't know how many really straight up white couples that we have. I think one of my issues with some of the white ministers in my area, guys like Benji Kelly at New Hope, J.D. Greer at Summit, I'll name their names because I've said it to their faces, that I don't think we're experiencing racial reconciliation just because black people go to their church. Black people follow white leadership. If not, we couldn't work at a job. If not, we'd never be able to vote for anyone. There'd never be a president that we would vote for if we couldn't follow white leadership. I think the test of racial reconciliation is not can black people follow white leaders, it's can white people follow black leaders. And right now within the church, that answer is no. That's unfortunate to me. I think anyone that watches these shows, anyone that is sitting here listening to me talk right now, anyone that watches any World Overcomers live stream, our service is not your typically African-American traditional experience. And I'm not knocking that. I'm just saying that it's not as if our service is so culturally, traditionally African-American that white people wouldn't feel comfortable in our service. No, that's not the case. And my challenge to Benji Kelly, J.D. Greer, Steve Furtick, any white pastor in America, whoever they may be, who feel like racial reconciliation is important, any of them. And I don't want to keep naming names because I don't want to seem like I'm picking on people. I just named some of the guys in the North Carolina area. My challenge to them, and I lay it down and I say it right now, and you can tell any of them that I said it, is that if you really want to address racial reconciliation, then you have to address the racism that's inherent within white culture. And I think that our current president is I don't know if I would call him a racist. I think he's just someone that is helping us. We may be unhappy about it, but he is someone who is helping us to see that racism is very much alive in America right now, and it certainly is alive within the church. I have the most watched religious program in the Triangle area. In the Raleigh-Durham, Fayetteville area, I have the most watched religious program on television. And the amount of times that I couldn't possibly have the most watched religious program and white people not watch much, it's just not possible. So there are definitely white Christians who watch me on television and I preach in white churches. But are they following me consistently? Are they here giving tithing? Have I lost black couples or black professionals to Summit? Most definitely. I'm sure I have. Have I lost black professional couples to New Hope? Most definitely. Have I lost black professionals to Elevation? Probably. Have they ever lost any white professionals to me? No, they have not. And what is that about? Well, that's about racism. And so, are we still dealing with racism in America? Most definitely. When Obama was elected president, when I went to vote for him, it's the craziest thing. I went to vote at my voting poll as I walked in. I know I'm going over on the time. A white woman, as I was walking in, a white woman handed me a ballot. This is first election, what was it, 2008? Okay? First election, Obama's running. I'm walking into the polling place. An older white woman handed me, basically, because when you go to vote, they'll give you almost like a sample ballot. So she hands me like, do you need a sample ballot? And I'm like, okay, sure. And she hands it to me. She's like, okay. And she pointed to Obama's name almost in the suggestive way of, okay, who you're voting for. And there was a part of me that was like, hey, listen, thank you, older white lady, but you don't have to tell me to vote for the black guy. I mean, I appreciate it. But I know that I left out of there feeling like, wow, awesome. This is great. A white person told me to vote for a black person. Maybe we're about to turn in this country. Maybe Obama being president will help to break some of the racial divide that exists in the church today. Maybe that'll happen. That was 2008. Here we are, 2018, 10 years later. My church is 97 to 98% African American. Why is that? It's because racism still exists in America. I think the question was, do we need to be more involved socially? I think we do, but to me it's sad that we do. I don't mind doing it, and I will speak out more. I would love to be able to be someone who speaks faith and can speak inspirationally about who God is and his power in your life and not have to feel that I have to be a black man to be successful. And I think that I've tried to carry myself, me anyway, Pastor Andy, I've tried to carry myself in a way in which I wanted to maintain the ability to minister life to anyone, regardless of their color. Unfortunately, it has become glaringly and more apparent to me that I'm 50 years old. Maybe in my lifetime I'm not going to see it. And like Dr. King, I can say we may get there one day. I'd love to get there. But we're not there now. And will we get there in my ministry lifetime? I don't know. I hope so. I'm saddened by the fact that I have to I have 3 boys that are 18 years old, 3 big, tall, strong African-American men who are 18. And it's sad to me that I have to have a conversation with them very similar to the conversation my father had with me 32 years ago about what to do when I'm pulled over by a cop. So it's sad to me that we're still kind of stuck in this racial place. But that being said, I do think it's becoming incumbent upon African American pastors to become more socially active and politically active, and I am starting to step into that role. I don't want to say reluctantly because I don't want it to seem like I don't want to do it, but my prayer was that by 2018, I would be able to minister to all people and not just my people, although that is, in a sense, what my local ministry has become. That was probably like 10 minutes. But.
It's all good. Great answer. Let's see. That was a good one. Okay, here it is. As a professional in my 30s, do you think building a career first so that I can have a strong foundation do you think it is important to build a career first so that I can have a strong foundation before entering a relationship?
I think that when it comes to career and relationship, and I think that the answer to men is different than the answer to women. I think for the answer to women, let me start with the ladies first. I think, ladies first. I think when it comes to women, I think that women need to be pursuing their education and their career first, unless a sure thing rolls through. And maybe that's going to be my answer to both. But I think if you're an African American woman, especially, and I think then it statistically it is wise for you to say, okay, I'm going to go to school, I'm going to get my career, I'm going to get my degree. Understand, ladies, that one of the mistakes that we make in our country especially is that we think to be equal, we have to be the same. And so women have fought a great battle for equality. And I believe in that struggle. I have daughters. I do not think it's fair for my daughters to be paid less for equal work. So I just think that what happens, though, is that to be treated equally, we start to want to act like we are the same. So women went on this great big, kind of had an agenda, a campaign of saying anything you can do, I can do. Anything if a man can be a fireman, a woman can be a fireman. If a man can be a soldier, a woman can be a soldier, because they felt like to be treated equally, we had to be seen as the same. Although I understand the impetus of that endeavor, we're not the same, and we shouldn't be the same. If you're the same as us, then you're going to end up with our weaknesses. And I think one of the weaknesses that men have is that men can be overly focused on career and not as focused as much on love and family and relationship. And a part of what you need from a woman is for a woman to say to you, no, you need to come eat with your kids, because you can have all the money in the world. What does it profit you to gain all of that and your kids won't speak to you? So I think for a woman to think, oh, well, I'm going to be just like a man and I'm going to be equally fulfilled by a career, you have to understand that it's not really the way that you're built, and you don't want to be built that way. You don't want to be someone who's so rich and so wealthy, but your children can't stand you, because there are a lot of men that end up in that place, and that's not a good place to be. I don't know if a woman will ever be as fulfilled by a career. I think women are deep enough and strong enough and complex enough to say, yeah, career is great, but stuff at the house needs to be good. I think one of the weaknesses of men is that we can almost be so focused on money and career, and stuff at the home isn't even all that great, and we're unaware of it, and we need to be reminded of it. At the same time, I feel like statistically, it's almost in line with the comments I just finished making a few minutes ago, and I know we're kind of sharing these segments broken up individually, but I think if you're an African-American man, an African-American person, period, it is absolutely viable for you to feel like white people are racist. And I think that you can carry yourself in that way in which you're expecting white people to be racist. And you can have a wall up against racism. And I think that that wall is justified until you meet a white person that's not racist. And when you meet one, if you meet a white pastor that you do trust, like my relationship with somebody like Mike Lee, I think I have to be careful not to have a wall up against all white pastors, because I'll close myself off from the white pastor or the white person that actually isn't racist, that actually doesn't just judge me by the color of my skin. In the exact same way, I think it's absolutely possible as a woman to have a wall up that says, all a man's gonna do is ruin my life. Absolutely unequivocally, I think that men have deserved, we have earned and deserved the reputation that we are deleterious to the success of women. Absolutely. We have abused women, we have raped women, we have subjugated women, we didn't let them vote, we treat them as property. One of the worst things that ever happened to women is men. No doubt about it. So I think if you're a woman right now and you're like, look, I'm at Central, I'm at Carolina, I'm at UNCG, I'm at UNC Charlotte, I'm at University of Miami, and I'm going to be a lawyer, and I'm not about to let some dude sidetrack me from being a Supreme Court justice or reaching my career CEO goals, you know what? I absolutely hear that, and you having that wall up is wise until you meet the right guy. And I think if you meet the right guy, if you're chaste, if you're not just giving it up, if you have tested him, you realize it's not just physical, and you meet the right dude, and you meet a guy that is smart, that is strong, that loves you, that's not just about himself, that is not intimidated by your gifts, and you let that dude go because you're afraid, and you keep a wall up against him, you may live to regret that. Maybe you won't, but you may live to regret that. Should you pursue your career? Most definitely. But if the right guy comes along, understand a good man is harder to get than your masters. When it comes to guys, I think guys do need to reach a certain success in their career because you don't know who you are. And you need to pick a woman where you know who you are. Because a woman is actually here to help you. And if a woman is giving you answers you don't need, then she can become a nag. But if you know what you need, which means you know yourself, you know what your strengths are, you know what your weaknesses are, then when you choose someone that's giving you help, it actually is a real benefit to you and a real blessing to you because you actually know what you don't do well. But I think for that to happen, you need to know who you are. And the problem with most guys is most guys pick a chick before they know what their problem is. When you know what your problem is, then you know what you need. Because ultimately, the woman is the answer to your problem. I keep going over, I'm sorry.
No, I mean, it's
did this
fine.
5-minute thing one time.
Well, I think, if you went over and it was like a bad answer, that would be different.
Right,
You know what I'm
sure.
saying?
Oh, okay.
But I think it's fine.
All right, cool.
I think this is a good follow-up question to, the discussion you were just talking about, having to raise your kids. Someone said, what things do you feel like you focused on when raising your kids to have them turn out so well?
Quite honestly, I wish I could take credit for my kids turning out so well. I really wish I could, quite honestly, for this question to really be answered. We'd really have to bring my wife on here really to answer that question. My wife was actually on, 103.9 with Melissa Wade in the Water here in the Raleigh-Durham Triangle area, in which they were talking about just that, kind of what is the most important stuff to instill in your children early on. I think it's an excellent example of what I was just saying. I'm the oldest of 8 children. I have spent a lot of my life around children. I was responsible for the last 5 of my siblings, really 6. There was a kid every 2 years. So when I was 6 years old, my sister Teresa was 4, my brother Matthew was 2. My mother had my brother Phil, who y'all know, he's all over the world. So when I was 6, my brother Matthew, who was 2 years old, became my responsibility. So as a result of being responsible for Matthew and Phil and April and Joey and Mike and Debbie, by the time Debbie was really there, I was kind of gone, but I had my fill of children. It doesn't mean that I didn't want to have children, but so I knew that I was going to need somebody that I knew I was going to focus on the ministry. I knew I was going to focus on my career. I knew I was going to need someone that focused on my children. For example, I'm here doing this Q&A show right now. My boys are on college visits right now with their mother. We made a decision early on that she was going to focus on the children and I was going to focus on the ministry. And so really, it's a question I can't really answer. I raised my children to put family first. I raised my boys to put family first. I made my boys have a work ethic. I've spoiled my daughters. It's just all there is to it. I spoiled my daughters. I feel like the opposite sex parent has a tendency to have a little bit of a different relationship. So I think fathers spoil their daughters and mothers spoil their sons. I feel like I was more determined to make sure that my boys had a work ethic. Not that my daughters don't have a work ethic, because they do. But my wife is really the person that really instilled a lot of the real no-joke serious qualities. To God be the glory, and to LaShawn be the glory. Anyone that sees Alexandra and Alex, but more really Kayla, and definitely AJ, Robbie, Kerwin, and who they are and who they will be. It's really going to be because of their mother, and really. So I'll have to get her on here to answer that question.
Cool. Someone asked, God gave me a dream and provision with it. What is your advice on how to start? And I think what they meant is how to start implementing that dream, making it a reality.
I think that there's a difference between having a dream and dreaming. When I was younger, there was this gospel artist. Her name was Danny Bell Hall. She had a song, and the words of the song was, Lord, let me have a dream without being a dreamer. Lord, let me have a vision without being consumed of it. And let me work with diligence, always knowing that you're the start and end of it. And Lord, in everything I do, remind me of my love for you. Lord, let me have a dream, but don't make me a dreamer. Meaning I think there's a difference between having a dream and you're just dreaming. I think a dream is something that God has given to you that is going to require Him, but it is actually attainable. And then I think sometimes you're just dreaming. I think both are important. There are some things that I I'm not sure if I'm just dreaming or if I actually have a dream. And I think that you don't know until there is some results. I think favor should be the fleece. I think I said that earlier. So I think if God has actually given you a vision and actually given you some resources to actually make it happen, then as you baby step out there, you should see some response. And the Lord will confirm his word with signs following. I know I said that earlier, but it will happen. And if you have never experienced any door, any favor, then you may have to ask yourself whether or not that dream is actually from the Lord, or is that dream just something that you have of something that you just always have wanted. Because, and I know that's tough, that's hard, that's a hard line to walk, because it can fill you with a certain amount of self-doubt. And like I said, I just turned 50 years old. There's a certain, right now, I think you all are sensing more than ever a push from me anyway, Pastor Andy, to use all of the gifts that I have besides just my pastoral leadership and my pulpit preaching gifts, because I believe that there's something that the Lord wants me to do outside of just the church world. But I'm 50 years old, and so I've given it a certain amount of time for me to see what I actually can accomplish, because maybe I was just dreaming, or maybe that was a dream. I think that you have to give it your best and forget the rest. That's P90X. Give it your best, see what God does. Believe me, he will confirm to you if it's something he wants you to do. Bro, me quoting P90X?
Yeah.
Sorry. Like I'm doing it right now. I'm not doing no P90X right now. I'm doing keto right now.
It took me back to my days of doing P90X in my college apartment. It was a terrible time.
Right.
It was a terrible time. What is one mistake you witness leadership make more frequently than others?
Wow. I mean, I think, it's very difficult as a leader. Let me say the leadership mistake I've made. And I don't want to say it in a defensive way, as if it's the best kind of mistake to make. I think one of the mistakes that I've made is that the way I tend to err is I err in believing that someone can do something that maybe they can't do. And I think that now here I'm getting ready to get defensive about it, but I think that that's a part of the role, is not just to have faith in God, but to have faith in people. And so I think a common mistake of leaders, good leaders, is that they believe people can do something that those people can't do. I think another common mistake of leaders is, and this is a part of even some of the teaching with some of the guys that I'm mentoring, is that they're more focused on performance than they're focused on some of the other aspects that are important when it comes to being successful. They just think, hey, if I just get on that stage and just speak, my talent will do it all, my gift will do it all, my anointing will do it all. But there's a whole lot more to being successful in the ministry than just whether or not you're gifted or talented or anointed. Even if you are gifted and talented and anointed, if there is an aspect of your personal life or an aspect of your partners, I've got these 7 P's that it takes to be successful. I'm not going to give them all to you. The enemy is smart. He's an archangel. We're battling against not only someone that's a powerful enemy in the Christian world, but even before he fell, he was in charge. Lucifer is smart, and if he knows that he has something on you, a backdoor weakness, he may even let you become successful so he can pull you down from your highest place and your fall can be more crushing. I think leaders have a tendency, especially sometimes as we get older, and it comes time to quit, we don't know when to quit. I think leaders, when we do finally figure out it's time to quit, sometimes I think we hand the ministry off to imitations of ourselves instead of true successors. Because I think a true successor may do something with the ministry that you wouldn't do, but it's going to be successful. And as a leader, as a minister, you have a certain amount of confidence in what you did, and not necessarily as much confidence in this person and what they may do with your ministry. I mean, I could just go on and on and on forever. I mean, you know, I think leaders make a lot of mistakes. I think that if you're looking for a perfect leader, I don't know if a person asked that question who's looking for a perfect leader, or I don't know if a person asked that question who's trying to be a perfect leader. Either one, you're not going to find a perfect leader. You're not going to be a perfect leader. I am not a perfect leader. I'd love to be. I'm striving to be as close to perfection as possible. But there's a bunch of guys in my fellowship. There's a whole bunch of new guys that are jumping in that are super excited about being in my fellowship. And they're down, and they love me, and they think I'm great. Then there are guys who have been connected to me who are not connected to me any longer, who if you sat down and talked to them, they may not have anything, they may have something really negative to say about me. And much to their detriment, maybe to mine. But right now I'm having conversations with all the new guys, and I'm saying to them, yo, if you're expecting perfection out of me, then you're going to be in trouble. And you're going to have to decide to be loyal. And for anyone who's looking for a leader, especially an ex-leader, but any leader, understand that that leader is going to be looking for faithfulness and loyalty above all else. So whoever you're going to be down with, me, Ari Vernon, Dewey, Van Moody, any of the major no-joke dudes, even some of the white guys I didn't mention who I don't know, at some point you're going to have to come to grips with one of us. The boomers are getting older, and they're going to go to their reward, and you're going to have to deal with one of us. You're going to have to be down with one of us. And it has to be a heart decision more than a head decision. But leaders make mistakes. And the same blood and grace that extends to the pulpit, to the pew, needs to extend to the pulpit. I'm answering a lot of questions, man. I know I went over a couple times, but I'm feeling good.
All right, I have one interesting one.
I like myself.
How are you? How up to date are you on Kanye West? Where are you at with Kanye? How up to date is it?
Here's my thing with Kanye.
Okay.
And this is going to be a little bit of a bite because I was watching an interview with Dave Chappelle, so I don't want to just absolutely totally bite his response, but it was brilliant. And his response, and I'm paraphrasing, was something to the effect that Kanye's an artist. He is an artist. And that he is commenting in a way because he is noticing a lot of divisiveness, and he is trying to battle against the divisiveness. And that we have to judge him based on that intent more than we judge him on the execution. It's kind of interesting, something I kind of wanted to talk about a little bit today, although I'm almost a little bit afraid to share it because it's my new thing and I don't want nobody to bite my styles, but somebody needs to record that. We're recording this, obviously. That I think that there is, in relationships, I think that I have this new thing that's in my head called Q, C-U-E. And Q stands for communication, understanding, and execution. So the first question is, how well have I communicated that? Then the second part of it is, how well did you understand it? And then the third part of it is, how well do you execute it? And sometimes I may be judging you. I may judge your understanding based on your execution, but it's absolutely possible that you totally understood, you just don't execute it that well. You may teach your 4-year-old kid how to make his own bed. Yolanda, you teach your little boy how to make his own bed? Okay, he already knows how to make his own bed. Okay, so let's say you say to him, go make up your bed. Okay, go make up your bed, all right? Does he understand what you mean? Sure, because I've met him. He's a smart little dude. He totally understood what you said. You communicated to him what that means. At some point, somebody showed him, this is what bed up, made up means. It means covers up, pillow in the right place, folded, covered over. That was communicated to him of what it means to make up his bed. Now he has an understanding of it. When you say, little dude, go make up your bed. Now, when you go in there and see what his bed made up looks like at 5 versus what his bed made up is going to look like at 10, his execution of it at 5 may not quite be as good as it's going to be at 10. At 5, you cannot discipline him for poor execution because sometimes it takes time to be able to execute. Whereas at 10, you might be able to say, this poor execution is a sign to me that you are rebelling against what I told you to do. And this happens in personal relationships. So are you not doing it because you don't really want to do it? Are you not doing it because I didn't really communicate it? Are you not doing it because you don't really understand? Or are you not doing it because you just aren't executing it that well? And I guess I'm saying all that to say that that's my comments on Kanye. Is Kanye's problem communication, understanding, or execution? I think Kanye West is a special person. And I think that he's had a lot of significant challenges that he has dealt with in his personal life. And I think that those personal challenges affect you in a great way. You know, my heart goes out to Kanye West, you know, the way he lost his mother and, you know, he's been through some tough things. I think that fortunately or unfortunately, we put a little bit too much stock in what a singer, rapper, what exactly is Kanye? I mean, whatever he is, I think, you know, it's typical of who we are as a culture in which we put a little bit more stock in gifts than we do in fruit. And so we are dealing with the President of the United States and public policy in America, and I don't know if I should take my cue from a rapper singer. So I don't know how much weight his words really have for me. You know, Kanye West doesn't have a PhD in public policy. Who is he? So I guess that, you know, that's my perspective on it.
It's a good perspective. You know, I think as a follow-up to that, I think what you said at the end is probably the most important, and is like, how do you kind of direct people into how they get information and how they sort information?
Sure.
Because a lot of people will take their public policy and their cue off of Kanye when really, and that's because that's kind of, I guess that's all they know. That's the world they live in, social media, such and such. How do you encourage people to become more informed? I know we're after the midterm, so it's kind of, but I still think it's an important conversation to have.
I think it's one of the challenges of African Americans. I think that we've had more athlete, talent heroes than we've had academic heroes. I think white people have had more academic heroes than athlete entertainment heroes. I'm not saying they don't have any entertainment heroes. I'm not saying they don't have any athlete heroes. But I think they've got way more academic heroes, whereas for African Americans, a lot of our heroes, a lot of our leaders got into leadership as a result of their athletic giftedness. Muhammad Ali, Bill Russell, Jim Brown, Would we know who they are if Jim Brown wasn't the amazing, if he wasn't the beast, monster, freak athlete that he is? Would we know who he is? Would we care about his comments on social justice? I'm so glad he's made them, but it's his talent and his gifting that got him into that position. Versus, so I think that for African Americans, what Kanye thinks matters more to black people than what Jerry Seinfeld thinks. And I'm not saying that white people aren't moved by stars as well. They are. I don't know if it's even a fair comparison, because I think they are moved by stars. And I think that the Democratic Party, the Republican Party tries to bring their stars in. They want Bruce Willis. They want somebody that people look up to, to endorse them. But I think that we do need to be more balanced in where we find our commentary. Mm-hmm. And I wake up every morning and I read CNN and Fox News every single day. I have to read both sides. Kanye West's and Kanye's comments are, if I do read them, it's only because I've exhausted all of the other very informed perspectives. And now I kind of want to see, what is Kanye talking about, kind of like it's a joke, and half the time I don't have time. By the time I finish reading and sorting through Fox News's perspective versus CNN's perspective so that I can kind of boil down and get down to the truth, I don't really have time to see what Khloe Kardashian thinks about Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. Praise God for Khloe. I'm not hating on her. Praise God for Kanye. Praise God for Michael Jordan. Praise God for LeBron James. Praise God for LeBron James. No doubt about it. And I think the fact that these guys don't want to go to the White House, it speaks volumes. But I just don't know if Steph Curry, no knock against Steph, brilliant guy, one of my favorite players in the NBA. I just don't know if I'm going to take my sense of what's good for the country based on Steph Curry's perspective. And I don't even think he thinks that. I think Steph Curry's like, I'm a basketball player. Thank you for asking me, but I don't even know if I'm qualified. I'm Pastor Andy. I don't even know how qualified I am to tell people whether or not, how they should vote. I want them to vote. I think they need to be aware of the issues. If you were going to ask me personally, I decide based on the issues themselves, personally. I'm an African American, so I have a tendency to agree with the heart of the Democratic Party. I heard someone, I think my best friend, I think he said something to me, like his grandfather, or someone said something to him to the effect of, when you're young, if you don't agree with the Democrats, you have no heart. When you're old, if you don't agree with the Republicans, it's because you have no money. So at the age of 50,
it's valid.
At the age of 50, there's some Republican stuff that I'm like, I hear you. I get it. If you asked me about the immigration issue, I pay a lot, Pastor Ray, I pay a lot of money in taxes. Mm-hmm. And I think I pay a lot of money in taxes because there's a lot of people in the country who are eating up resources that don't pay any taxes. So we're either going to figure out a way to make them all citizens and tax them all, or we need to build a wall. I'm not for the wall. Mm-hmm. I'm not against the wall. I'm against the wavering. We can't stay in this middle place. So we're either going to go around all of North Carolina and we're going to stop at every gas station. We're going to pick up all of these Mexicans and we're going to go to every port country. We're going to pick up all of the Africans, all of the people who are like, yo, I want to go to America. Get them all, line them all up, and just start handing them out cards. And just give them all social security numbers, and just da-da-da-da-da, and we tax them all.
Sure.
Or we have to keep them out. Because it's not fair for me to have to row for the whole nation. And people that are representing the Republican Party are saying that. They are representing that top 1%, that top 10% of earners. And I know people just feel like, oh, yeah, well, the top 10%, they need to get it together. I hear that. I totally get that. At the same time, what is this thing? Just times out after a certain amount of time?
Yeah, but we're towards the end now. That was the last question.
Sure. What was the original question? What were you asking me? You're asking me about the.
At this point, I've lost.
You totally lost what I'm saying. Anyway, my point in all of it is just, when it comes to the political landscape, I think that as an African American, particularly as a Christian, I tweeted something or posted something on Instagram about me voting, and I was saying you can't just pray to God. Trump needs to hear you. Someone commented on my post and said, "Oh, so you agree with gay marriage and abortion?" And I think that in the Christian world, we have a tendency to become so easily manipulated into just focusing on those two issues when there's a whole lot at stake right now in the country. And it's, why, if I'm critical of Trump, why does that automatically mean that I'm in favor of abortion? It's absolutely possible for me to be critical of Trump's rhetoric anyway, because I don't know him. It's absolutely possible for me to be critical of his divisive rhetoric and still not think that abortion's a good thing. Me as an African-American pastor in a conservative church, this is a conservative church, okay? World Overcomers is a conservative doctrine, okay? I'm not trying to offend anybody, but the Bible that we preach and teach here is against same-sex relationships. Okay, let's just put it out there. In case anybody has any confusion or wants to know wonders, I don't think that same-sex marriages or same-sex relationships are healthy to the person. I don't. I'm not intolerant. I don't hate them, but I'm not in love with their lifestyle, or I would call it sin, but I don't want to overly offend anybody. But it is what it is. So I can't be critical of Trump by me being critical of his rhetoric. That means that I embrace homosexuality as a lifestyle. Why are we so easily delineated?
It's like the road with two ditches.
That's right.
Yeah.
There's a ditch on either side of the road, and I think the whole power of democracy is that you can think about each individual issue. You want to know how I voted in the midterms? For most of the officials, I voted for quite a few, probably 9 out of 10 of the, I probably did vote for a lot of the Democratic officials. I probably did vote along those lines because I understand that the Democratic Party is the one that has a tendency to have the most compassion for African American people. When it came to the constitutional questions, when it came to the different things, I probably answered it a more Republican way. And I feel like I should have that right to do that as an American.
Absolutely.
Because I just happen to be that black person who cares a lot about people who are in poverty, and I happen to have some money and would like to have more.
Amen.
Amen.
I think my mic's muted, but amen. I want everyone to hear.
All right. All right, so this has been great, right? Good show. I know we've gone over just a little bit, but we started late. It's been great. I really thought this show was really cool.
Good.
See you next week, next Thursday, for our third degree. Peace out.